Good evening. Welcome to Vinny Parco's Law and Disorder. We have a lot of disorder going on. I've got to tell you, I have three guests tonight. I have really good people tonight. One of them you've always seen before, Courtney Turner. One of the things that's been bothering me, and it's the attack on the First Amendment. Twitter has banned Trump and actually banned all his supporters. So what they did was they lumped everybody who supported Trump or anybody who's of the conservative mindset, and they can't. The Parler has been taken off. Apple has taken the apps for Parler and some of the other conservative platforms off, and the First Amendment has been basically a little obliterated. And that's one of the things I want to talk about tonight. But we have some really good guests tonight. Two of them were at Washington D.C. to talk a little bit about the peaceful protest and how the media, the press, the liberal press, the leftists, and the Socialist Democrats, which, by the way, I think that should change the name of the party to the Socialist Democrat, like they do in Europe. They have Socialist Democrat. I think we should do the same thing. They are vilifying Trump for inciting a riot when he said peaceful. People, and CNN actually twisted, a matter of fact, Courtney's going to talk about that, how they twisted some of the words in his speech around, and then they retracted it. I think it's terrible, and they're also the Democratic Congress is talking about some sort of legislation banning certain words in that they consider seditionist, treasonous. If you're a conservative, you're treasonous. And I think it's terrible, and we've got to talk about it. Now, what they've done is made the people that defended Trump or supported Trump more vocal now and more pissed off about what's going on. Now, they have other platforms that have been formed that are of conservative. And when I say conservative, I mean, you could just talk anything. I mean, you could have liberals on the platform also. I don't understand why. I'm getting some texts from people. Yeah, you got a ringside seat, Anthony. We got a big problem in this country. We're very divided. Now, when Donald Trump was elected in 2016, the Democrats did not go to his inauguration. They did not support him at all, which was kind of unusual, because even after an election, there's some, you try to have a peaceful transition. No. Then they had these people saying, not my president. And then they tried to impeach him. Then they went over with this Russian collusion, which never happened. $40 million worth of investigative and legal wrangling, and they didn't get anything. Matter of fact, there's some FBI reports that are a public record that the FBI agents even said, hey, there's nothing here. What are we doing? But they kept pushing and pushing. Then they said something about Trump making a phone call to the Ukrainian president and talking about Biden's son, who happens to come back now with the laptop and his CEO of his company, Bobinsky, talking about how they're involved with the Ukraine, how they're involved with Chinese. I mean, you got a lot of stuff out there. And I think that we, as Americans, have to do something but peaceful. Now, when the riots happened during the summer, Biden and Kamala Harris said, oh, there were peaceful protests. And as they're speaking about it, you could see the fires burning, the buildings that they burned down, the stores that they destroyed, people that they assaulted. They even assaulted the mayor of Portland. Matter of fact, he's changed his tune a little bit himself. They've threatened him, and he actually protested with them. So what are we going to do? We have to unite peacefully and act as a political unit. And that's one of the things I think that Trump established by showing the um, criminality of the Democratic Party, Democratic Socialist Party. Now we have some really good speakers on tonight, and I want to give them time because I could talk all night. And we're going to put Avi Gavilli on first. He's the publisher of Boulevard Books, and he's got a few things to say. What do you have to say tonight? Thank you for coming on.
How are you, Vinny? Good to be here. So I was listening to what you said. I think, though, we have to look at the facts, right? America is a fact-driven country, right? I want to read you something in today's Wall Street Journal, right? They're describing Wall Street Journal as a conservative, business-oriented paper talking about the riots. These are investigators. Quote, in one sign that investigators believe there was at least some advanced planning by some members of the mob, including those that had military training, prosecutors disclosed in court documents that one of the rioters was found to have 11 Molotov cocktails and a weapons collection in his pickup truck that included a handgun, a rifle, a shotgun, several large capacity magazines, hundreds of rounds of ammunition, a crossbow with bolts, several machetes, smoke devices, and a stun gun. This is one of the people that they caught who raided the Capitol. If that is not the definition of sedition, I don't know what is.
I have to agree on that. Yeah.
Right? These were people.
Now, was he a Trump supporter or was he just somebody?
He was a Trump supporter, 70-year-old. His name was Lonnie Kaufman.
How old was he?
70.
So
Fired up.
Well, wow.
This is dangerous. We're Americans
here.
Have
much to live.
Well, look, there's no denying that there are people out there that, for one reason or another, are fired up in a way that is criminal. That's my opinion. There are many Trump supporters that are good people. In fact, in the last election, one of the things that the Democrats really were upset about was that they lost a lot of Latinos in the Florida and different sections of Texas. Why? Because that base is becoming more conservative and voted for Trump because they believed in his conservative policies, right? Including, believe it or not, aspects of the immigration law. So Trump supporters are various, and I believe largely independent-minded in many ways. And I come from the conservative bastion of New York City, which is Staten Island. And largely many Trump supporters here, many friends of mine are Trump supporters. I may not agree with them because I did not vote for him twice. And I think that he has done some good things. I mentioned criminal justice reform, the work in the Middle East, the fact that prescription drugs now are transparent is amazing. That is going to save lives, financially and otherwise, right? But the man has burned his legacy by encouraging people to be seditious. There is massive amounts of evidence to prove that. I just read you a snippet. Why he's doing this, I have some ideas, but there's no evidence yet. There's some history of him. I have read his books. He is a person who feels that he will do anything to win.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that, yeah. He has a tremendous ego.
Dangerous ego.
Yeah, I have to, as much as I support him, I have to be very honest. He has a big mouth. He says that he likes to belittle people, and that's how he. Now you got to remember when he ran for the primary against the 16 Republicans, he was the only non-politician running. What he did was he whittled them down one by one by his tweeting, right, and by making fun of them, and it actually worked for him. But it didn't work from this time. I don't think it worked from this time.
Well, also, there were things that he said that really resonated with people. Listen, the Republican Party, like the Democratic Party, is in flux, but the Republicans more so. Why? Deficit spending, where is the logic on deficit spending? Out the window, right? Business-minded, okay, yes, but where is that, right? We can see that Trump has really brought together a group of people. 70 million people voted for him.
I think more than 70, but who's counting?
Let's talk official numbers, right? 70 million people voted for him. They believed in what he was saying, including very much on the fact that he helped them during the pandemic. He was instrumental in releasing funds to get to American citizens. Yes, does he make mistakes? And did he make mistakes? Yes.
The COVID vaccine.
That was his call, although he could have taken it much more
But I'm going to ask you something. Aside from, how come nobody, with all the money that they've collected for muscular dystrophy, MS, MD, all these different diseases, over the 40 years, I mean, I went to the Jerry Lewis telethon when I was a kid. I've been there a few times. How come they haven't found a cure? But they found a cure for the COVID-19 virus in less than a year.
So the COVID, listen, Trump did push that hard. The COVID virus, the COVID vaccine rather, is one of the new ones that are going to be coming out because of CRISPR gene editing. It's an RNA kind of algorithm. They don't inject the virus into you, right? What they do is they inject a CRISPR gene editing kind of sequence, which then tells the body how to fight or encourage immunity in it, right? And now we're going to see, in fact, there was an article today that cancer rates are going down. We're going to see, because of this new amazing technology, people are going to be able to live longer, healthier. Cancer is going to be, God willing, a thing of the past. And people generally are going to be able to fight these diseases. Trump's problem politically that he miscalculated on two levels. One was that he did not take seriously enough that senior citizens were very worried about the fact that they were most susceptible to dying. And they vote in mass. Come to Staten Island and you'll see all the politicians in senior citizen homes. They know that, right? Yeah. And two is that he told his constituents, the people who wanted to vote for him, go in and vote and don't submit absentee ballots, don't mail your ballots in, although it's been legal for God knows how many years. Who was giving him advice? I don't know. He was probably paying them a lot of money. He could have paid me a lot less and I would give him better advice. But it was a massive miscalculation, and you called it. When you have a large ego, and I know this about myself, I make my biggest mistakes when my ego is at its biggest and highest. And then I have
too.
Most people do.
I feel that myself.
I can't tell you. I can write books about it. Let me tell you.
Oh, you're a publisher. You could write a few more books about it.
That's right.
You got to publish my book.
Yours would be interesting.
Yeah.
As a private eye, you look for facts. And, I feel that's the way to go forward as Americans. And, there's a lot to be said for what George Washington and Thomas Jefferson warned us about. The two-party system, it will destroy America. These people, these talking heads that just make a living out of fighting with each other, waste our goddamn time as Americans.
Well, the way I look at it now, we only have a one-party system. We have a Democratic president. We have Democratic Congress, and now we're going to have a Democratic Senate. So we have a one-party system. Now, I like the fact that we have two parties. I like the Republican, and I like the Democratic Party, and I like the independent parties too, because you want to have a back and forth. Now there's no checks and balances. They're going to be able to push whatever they want through. And then if the Republicans get back into power at some point in time, if they ever, then they're going to change things back the way they want it.
They'll do it on purpose.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. I mean, Biden has already said he wants to destroy the Second Amendment.
Well, what he said was that he wants to take on the NRA. Now, yeah. I always tell, I'm a gun owner myself. New York City makes it very difficult, but I believe in the Second Amendment. I also think it's quite important that the founding fathers call it the Second Amendment after the First Amendment, which was free speech. It's not the 13th, the 14th, 5th. That was the second thing that they placed in, and that shows the importance of this God-given right, in a way. I think the NRA is what he talked about, and there is evidence to show that they are not completely honest, and there are things going on there, right? Now, when you look at the statistics of gun violence, there is a book that came out from a professor of University of Kentucky who really does talk about it. It's nonpartisan. He talks about the fact that there is more gun violence in states that have loose gun rules. And he says that largely high gun ownership to fight the crime that goes on in these states, South Carolina, for example. So there is some logic to this, but I don't think the Supreme Court of the United States will ever go along with, not now, not in 20 years, not in 50 years, with doing away with the Second Amendment. I don't think so.
What if they packed the court with liberal judges?
I think that's not going to happen for the next 30, 40 years, thanks to Trump. I mean, they're all conservative now.
Yeah, but if they're going to pack, if they put more justices on the Supreme Court, let's say we have 9. Let's say they put in, they say, all right, we're going to put 4 more. We're going to have 13, and they're all going to be liberal. Then we're going to have a different change of a lot of different changes.
Well, yeah, I would agree, but there's some precedent here to tell us that conservative judges can lean liberal, and
Right.
and liberal judges, Supreme Court judges, can also vote for conservative policies, and that's the 20th century is a good example of that, right?
Well, Jenny Myers Solis just says that the executive order is how they're going to destroy this country.
Well, time will tell, but I got to say, I'm rooting for America. It's been wonderful to see the judiciary, time and time again, judges that Trump has put in largely say, no, this is against the Constitution. There's no evidence. That's a beautiful thing. That's the disagreement that we need in America, right? If there's no evidence.
You know, it's interesting. The last bill that they just passed for the COVID bill to give people money and to give money to foreign countries was 5,000 pages, and the American Constitution is only 4 pages long.
I know. What's going on in Pakistan?
Yeah. Well,
gender education.
Was it gender studies or something? I don't know.
What are you doing?
Or something like whatever it was. I mean, why do we give $10 million to them when we need people are starving in our country?
Well, I mean, that's a valid question. That is a real valid question.
I mean, here's my feeling. Now, as an investigator, I worked in law enforcement, and I worked thousands of cases. When you have a politician pushing for some crazy, they call them pork barrels. How they get it? They get on the Congress for someone's getting paid off. It has to be. So they have lobbyists. Lobbyists. Yeah. What the lobbyist is a bag man. It's a bag man.
Yeah.
He lobbies. He takes them out to lunch and dinner. That's okay. And then they have ways of giving them money. They give them some money, and then they pay. Oh, let me pass a bill. Let's put a provision in this act that we can give Pakistan $1 million, $10 million, or $1 billion, whatever. Why do we have to give money to all these countries? Now, I understand in the 60s and 70s, especially in the 50s and 60s, when we had the communist threat, that we were giving money to countries so they wouldn't go communist. You know, we're bribing them. That's all we did.
Right. The domino.
And we're still doing it. Do you know that the United States gives out money to 196 countries, and 185 of them vote against us in the UN? So why do we give them money?
Well, one answer, I don't have a total answer for that, and that's a good subject to learn about. But one answer is, when you talk to some of these lobbyists, I've had an opportunity to speak to them. A lot of them use the same phrase. It's a jobs bill for Americans. So what does that mean? It means when there's a donation to the country, the work is done in America, and that's how they justify it. Now, you would need to go into the specifics and really see if that's true. But if that is the case, then it's worth thinking about. But at a time when, Americans were getting $600 and they needed more money, I mean, every American has the right, is furious because they're looking at this and they don't understand it, and they're getting $600. One guy said, okay, 600, I'm glad for the stimulus, but I work in a restaurant and I haven't been able to get back to work for 6, 8, 10, 12 months.
What's $600 going to do?
Right.
Matter of fact, today I got the brakes on my car. Cost me almost $600, so I'm even.
At least.
I didn't get my check yet.
I was looking at what Ireland was doing, and they're pretty generous approach. Now, there's a whole economic logic to being generous with your citizens, because it goes back into the economy and boosts everybody up, right? It gets spent on that, right? And so that's the logic of, and I think Trump understood that. And at this point, we're heading to a vaccine, and I think it'll get better. But $2,000. I'm for it, man. Anything to help people feel that they're not desperate in a country that's the wealthiest country in the world. It's not necessary.
You know what makes me laugh? You have all these, I call them the elite. They're the ones that are pushing for this blanket of all the conservatives talking on any kind of platform. But with the billions that they have, with Bezos has $180 billion, and Elon Musk is okay. He's a good guy. But all these guys, the guy on Twitter, by the way, Twitter got a 12% drop in this.
I know, $4.86 billion. Yes.
Good for him. But in any event, why don't they all give a couple of their billions dollars and spread it out? Why don't they? They want to practice socialism, but only with other people's money. Remember what Margaret Thatcher said? Socialism, eventually they run out of other people's money.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's similar to what George Orwell said. He actually wrote a book about working with socialists. He's the author of Animal Farm in 1984. That's been, going up the charts last week. But he said in his experience, socialists don't like poor people. They just hate wealthy people. And I thought that was really eye-opening. And you look at the 20th century, let us remember that the Nazis considered themselves socialists.
Yeah.
They were the National Socialist Party.
The National Socialist Party.
Right, right. And so these people who are waving this flag, I think that we kind of need to take a step back and discuss these terms, right? What is socialism? What are you saying here? In terms of specific legislation, like universal health care, if there's ever been a time that we need a unified national system, it's now. Look at New York State. Vaccines being thrown in the garbage. First, certain people get.
We have an incompetent governor, so that's why.
The King Cuomo is good and not good, right? He writes books at a time of, he's got a lot of things going on over there. And politicians,
big ego.
Big egos.
By the way, we got some other people on deck waiting to talk too. So you and I could talk all night. But we're going to bring you back on later. So don't go away.
I'm here.
Let's have Joe Croce on. He was there. All right, Joe. Let's hear from you. You were there in Washington. Come on, I want to hear. You got a lot to say, baby.
So hold on.
Okay, now I hear you. What do you have, a technical difficulty here? Oh, what happened? Anthony, what happened here? Okay, we got Courtney. Okay. By the way, Joe is an IT guy. He owns his own company, and
oh, good. He
must have had a problem with
for conservative.
He lives in upstate New York in the mountains. I think maybe he had a problem with his Wi-Fi. But let's talk to you. You were there too.
Tell him he needs to build some servers so that places like Parler and other free speech platforms can use it.
We're going to have to do that. Eventually, they're going to throw me off Facebook anyway.
Right. So that's why we need to be building other servers, because the problem with Parler is that the Amazon hosts the server, or rather Amazon owns the server that they host on. And Amazon cut them off. They breached their contract.
Well, it's funny how there's a comma here. There's a company in Iowa that has a platform, and they threw Twitter off. They threw Twitter off. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it affected Twitter in a bad way, but
oh, sorry. Yeah.
But it shows you,
Yeah,
don't throw rocks if you live in a glass house,
Yeah, I was going to say, did you see what they said about Uganda cutting off they banned Twitter because they were censoring, and they said for the elections they don't want any censorship, and Twitter got so upset, and I was like, oh, so is that the pot calling the kettle black or what?
It's amazing. The hypocrisy is unbelievable. Like, for example, the Democrats said that Trump is causing all kinds of questioning the election. Well, they questioned his election They questioned George Bush's election when, I mean, it's part of our system. You're allowed to do that. It's in the Constitution.
Well, and there was probable cause. So
yeah.
there's probable cause.
As we discussed earlier, Avi and Joe and I, before you came on, we were talking about how, it's just craziness. It's just crazy. It's hard to explain. That's why I got you people on the show. You could explain more better than I can.
Yeah, well, or at least try. It's a pretty upside down world that we're living in.
Yeah.
And a large portion of it is due to the media. We're getting so much disinformation. As you were talking about in the opening, I had mentioned before we got on about how CBN had, and they admitted it, and they had to apologize. They literally doctored the speech. I was at the ellipse. I know that Trump did not incite violence. In fact, Trump didn't even get there. The violence started, and this is the other reason that is a very strong indication that this was a setup. The timing of when that started was not in any way in Trump's favor. They were about to go through the constitutional process where the states would start to investigate and carry out the constitutional process. That got derailed because of the quote unquote storming. It was not storming. People were walking in, people were escorted in, velvet ropes were moved out for them. It was very peaceful. There was some violence, which is tragic. And in no way do I ever support that.
But you're going to get 1 million. How many people were there approximately? About 500,000, 1 million?
So I didn't get to the Capitol too much later, but I can tell you at the ellipse, my guess is that it was over 1 million people.
Okay. So we have 1 million people anywhere. I don't care where you have them. You're going to have a problem. You're going to have a couple hotheads. You're going to have a couple crazy people. You can't help it. You can't help it. It's going to happen.
That's not the main problem. So Trump did not incite any kind of violence. Sure, are you going to have some people who are, who are violent, who are heated? That may happen in a big crowd.
By him asking them to come is inciting. That's in their mind. That's what it is.
But no, that isn't.
That's what they think.
No, that's not what they're saying. They literally had to doctor up his speech. Go check it's public knowledge. CBN had to apologize. They moved around. They edited his speech, so they cut up the words and.
CNN, but the NBC, ABC, or CBS.
He specifically said peaceful. He said, "Let's go over to the Capitol and let your voices peacefully be heard." He never suggested violence. There has never.
They voted to impeach him today.
Pardon?
They voted to have an impeachment, but he's not impeached yet.
No, the House has voted, and they decided to impeach him.
Go to the Senate.
Senate, yeah.
Right. And some of the Republicans are against Trump. Some of them are backstabbed.
I mean, at this point, this isn't about Republicans or Democrats. This is about patriots, people who stand for America and what America stands for, and for freedom, and for the free will of humanity, and people who are treasonous, and people who are supporting tyrannical forces. That's really the battle. This isn't about Republicans versus Democrats. There are many Republicans who, were either threatened or corrupted or, they're siding with the tyrannical forces. And I'm not privy to.
One of the reasons is that when Trump came in, he said, "I'm going to drain the swamp." He actually said that he's going after Republicans too.
Of course. Well,
so even though he got elected, they went with him because he was the president. He was the boss, so to speak. Right. But now they have an opportunity to stab him in the back to say, I really didn't like the guy. I just hated him, but I had to stay with the party line.
I don't know that that's really what happened, to be really honest. Now, again, I'm not inside. I'm not, there. I can't tell you. But what
Anthony Rosati agrees with you. That's correct. Trump said peaceful, but the corrupt media will never admit it.
Exactly. He did say peaceful several times. He believes in standing by the Constitution. There was no.
Says break up these social platforms like they did with Bell Telephones 40. That's true. They are now becoming.
It violates antitrust laws. They absolutely should. But sorry, go on. Yeah.
No, he's right. They're a monopoly.
They are a monopoly.
And
They're
I-
absolutely a
But
monopoly.
what I'm worried about,
I want to go back to what you were saying, though, that you think these people were just, going along even though they didn't like Trump. I don't really think that that's what happened. I mean, there may be some people who were Republicans who didn't like Trump and they went along with it. But I think more likely, the swamp is called the swamp for a reason. There is a tremendous amount of corruption. There is tremendous pressure. And there are when they call it the deep state, that state is very, very deep. Those forces go so far beyond anything that is American in any kind of sense of traditional American values, supporting the American Constitution. There are really forces that are fighting for, and they keep calling it insurrection. They are the insurrectionists. They are going against, this is a color revolution. They're conducting an ideological subversion. And there has been an attack and a siege in many different layers. We haven't seen kinetic warfare yet, but we've seen biological, we've seen cyber, we've seen we've seen AI. We've seen economic. I think it's a matter of time before it would be kinetic. But this is, make no doubt about this. This is a color revolution, and that's from within. They're taking it down from within, and that's the problem.
This is going to become more violent.
When they say insurrection, this is rules for radicals. Saul Alinsky. Whatever they say that we are, that's what they are, and they project it onto us.
It's always good to, as an investigator, many years I've been working as a detective, and the people that are complaining about other people are doing the wrong that they complain about the other people. For example, when I get a client, the husband calls me up and says, "Look, I think my wife's cheating on me." The first thing after I get all the information, I said, "Who are you seeing? What do you mean?" I said, "You got a girlfriend, though. You got a mistress, don't you?" And he says, "Oh, well, yeah." I said, "Well, don't you think your wife could hire an investigator to investigate you? So be careful. If you want to catch her, don't get caught yourself." And that happens.
Yeah, of course.
I've had cases where people in corporations complain about other people in the company, and meanwhile they're the ones that are stealing.
Right.
They put the blame on somebody else. They won't think it's me.
Exactly. This is in Rules for Radicals. I mean, Saul Alinsky laid this out very well. This is part of their tactics and their strategies. But this is really, it's dangerous, and it's a lie. I think that's what's so tragic, is this country is being torn apart by lies. I think the one silver lining is so many of these lies are coming to light. There are still people who believe the lies. There will always be people who believe the lies. But I think more and more people, and I think especially with what happened, in DC on the 6th, I think a lot of people are waking up to just how nefarious and insidious these, attacks really are, and these lies really are, and the media and the way that they portray things. It's really obvious to anybody who just opens their eyes and asks some questions that this was a setup. And I think the key thing that I keep going back to is the timing of it. The timing could not have been worse for Trump and for America. It literally derailed the constitutional process.
Unfortunately, I have to agree with you on that.
I
wish you were wrong, but I think you're right.
Trump wasn't even finished with his speech when that incident happened at the Capitol. That's why I didn't make it over there. I was still at the ellipse listening to his speech.
Yeah.
I
also understand that the mayor of Washington, D.C., a Democrat, made sure that all the convenience stores were closed.
Yep.
That there were no porta potties. There were no toilet facilities.
Trump had porta potties for us. Thank goodness. That was
did? Okay.
Yeah. Thank goodness. That I was there at 5 a.m. Yeah. Thank goodness.
You got people there.
Yeah.
Steve Gretsch says it was a complete setup. I agree with you, Steve. It was so obvious we wouldn't be there where we are now. That's true, Ed. We got a lot of people coming, calling, texting in. I love this. See, I like this format that I don't have to hear them, but I can see that. Wow, we got so much. I mean, it's just unbelievable. But what bothers me is my opening statement is that all these platforms they're like cutting out any kind of free speech. Now, I think a liberal person should also be incensed by this because,
of course,
they want to say something, or even somebody who's middle of the road.
Anybody who believes in free will and freedom
Wants to be able not to be.
should defend the First Amendment. The First Amendment isn't just free speech, by the way. It is the right to peaceably assemble, which is what was done on the 6th, regardless. People were burning over the summer. People were burning down buildings.
That was peaceful. That
was shooting people, and that was mostly peaceful. On the 6th, you had a couple of incidences of violence.
That was all over the newspaper.
It was truly mostly peaceful, and they call this insurrection and sedition and all sorts of violent acts, and that's just not true. It's just not true.
Now, what's your opinion? What Trump could do next?
I think that there's a lot of things. I think there really needs to be what we are about to experience, and we're starting to see it. Is the first thing is the First Amendment.
Roger Bombas said Mike Pence for 2024. No effing way.
No, he's
no effing way.
Yeah.
He's a rat.
But when the First Amendment is under attack the way that it is currently, it's a matter of time before the Second, Third, and Fourth Amendment are in jeopardy. And I think that because the First Amendment is so viciously being attacked right now, we're seeing they want to arrest people who just went to DC. They're saying Amex, American Express, said they won't work with conservative. Deutsche Bank said they won't work with conservatives. So I think the thing that Trump can do, and it would be great if he does, he's got at least 75 million, and I think it's a lot more than that. People, and I think it's interesting. His approval rating actually increased after the 6th, which
but what bothers me about
I'm sorry.
Let me interrupt you. Let's go back to the NFL, the kneeling and the not going for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, but what happened was America said we're not going to football games no more. We're not going to watch football games anymore.
Right.
And all of a sudden, they had to tone down. So what I'm thinking is, and this is a positive statement, is that eventually, what happened with Twitter, people are going to say, wait a minute, they want to be to the left. We're not going to support them financially.
Right. So what Trump could do, and what not just Trump, because I think that this country was not founded on the premise that any one man or any one plan could save us. It has always been we the people, for the people, by the people, for the people, and it's consent of the governed. And I think it is incumbent upon us, we the people, to defend our rights and stand up for our rights. And the thing that we can do to exercise our freedom is create alternative platforms.
Stephen Gressa, camera angles that CBS, CNN, ABC use, and the narratives of reporting right out of a script. And you're right, Steve.
CBN actually did apologize because they literally doctored the speech. They reversed the wording and the timing of it so that it looked like he was inciting violence, which was
Charlie Fishman. Oh boy, we got everybody's I love it. Everybody's calling in, but we can't put all your.
I really want to encourage people to create alternate media platforms, create alternate banking platforms.
We're gonna let Joe. Joe had technical difficulty. Anthony, and we're all gonna come back on. Everybody, we're gonna have a whole bit. So Anthony, can we get Joe on? All right, Joe.
I'm here.
All right, I hear you. You're not smoking either. Okay.
So
it's yours.
So listen, I wanted to compliment Courtney on a great job. You spoke very clearly, and I could definitely agree with everything you're saying. Again, I'm a little bit biased, and I'm gonna admit that. Good. Unlike another guest on the show, Avi, who listen, I respect everybody's opinion, but Avi comes in there. Admitted that he didn't vote for Trump not once, not twice, and then tries to say that Trump did some good things, but let me sneak in all the crap that I don't like about him. So obviously, Avi is a publisher and he's a liberal. God bless you. I mean, you're entitled to your opinion. But the other thing is Avi was all over the place. I'm trying to write stuff down so I could respond to his comments, and I just lost track of it. I gave up.
We're gonna get before the night is over. We're gonna all get back. Everybody's gonna be back on.
Anyway, if you want to stick to a topic, because there are so many topics surrounding President Trump, then we could, and the minute you try to drill into a little detail, then you go on to something else and nobody ever gets to the bottom of anything. So if you're going to ask me a question, I'd like to stick to the bottom of one thing and get to the bottom of it. For example, everybody's saying no evidence whatsoever of election fraud, right? Okay, how do you account for in a county there's 100,000 registered voters and they got 120,000 votes, and no judge wants to look at that?
The judges are afraid. They're afraid.
All right, so I keep hearing this over and over about the election fraud, not a shred of evidence, nothing. Yeah, there were 60 lawsuits and not a single judge was able to look at the evidence and bring it into court. All those lawsuits were dismissed.
Right.
So
now let me ask you something, Joe. If this is an if, hypothetically speaking, if Trump evokes the Insurrection Act, okay, they would bring him to court on that. They would have to bring him to court. At that point, the evidence could come in. It's sort of going through the back door of court. But if he did that,
right, but there's no just cause to invoke the Insurrection Act because that's a catch-22 you don't want to get involved in. Because in order for Trump to do that, that would mean that there would have to be riots all over the country, and he would need the military to quell it because the National Guard's not enough. And who's going to cause these riots? It would have to be Trump supporters. That's not going to help his cause. So I don't think that's never going to happen.
If they could prove foreign intervention into the election, if they could prove that, then they have a case. But will they do it? I don't know. Trump has an ego that he doesn't want to lose, and at this point, I think the military is behind him.
Oh, I know the military's behind him. I believe it. I have a lot of friends in the military, but that's not the point here. The point is, what can he do within his legal rights? And right now, he has the liberal media. He has every single liberal in Congress attacking him. And everything he does is misrepresented. The words are twisted around. We've seen it time and time again, all over CNN, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for the last 4 years, nonstop. I challenge anybody on this show to play me a 30-second clip from CNN in the last 4 years where a compliment was given to President Trump.
Never.
Even a broken clock is right twice a day. Okay, there's no way that this man was in the White House for 4 years and didn't do a damn thing right. Give me a break. It's just absolutely one-sided. This man has never gotten a break. And if I was a personal advisor to President Trump, I would say, Mr. Trump, stay home in 2024. This isn't worth your aggravation. You deserve
that. I have to agree with.
But not because he's not qualified, not because he wouldn't do a great job. Because why would anybody subject themselves to the continuous attacks for the next 4 years again, and leave the office without thanks from anybody? I mean, I could show you 74 million people that are going to remain loyal to him. And if the Republicans keep with this narrative of they want to erase Trump from their ranks and erase Trump supporters, I could see the Patriot Party starting up soon, and the Republican Party dissolving.
I get a lot of conservative emails every day, and I see a lot of people talking about the Patriot Party. But that Patriot Party is just like the Tea Party, it's
right. It came and went. It was dust in the wind. I get all that, but they didn't have Trump.
No.
And then I want to address another issue if you'll let me. So we saw this assault on the Capitol, which everybody agrees was a disaster. Nobody wanted it. Didn't help Trump. I certainly I had no part in that. I know Courtney had no part in that. But it's really funny how you go and watch the liberal media, and for the last 7 or 8 days now, they've been chewing on this like a dog with a bone. And every single day, if you flip onto CNN right now, I'm sure you're going to see pictures of the riot and people breaking windows. They have not let this go for 1 second. Yet, all summer, I had to listen to the mostly peaceful protests. And I listen to that and I think about mostly peaceful protests. That's like saying she's a little bit pregnant.
Yeah, no, that.
I mean, that makes no sense. Either the protest was peaceful or they lit buildings on fire, which they did. So I don't. The double standard of hypocrisy they know no bounds whatsoever.
But I'm hoping that there's enough reasonable people in this country that are going to see this. I mean,
listen. As far as reasonable, I think that most Trump supporters and most conservatives are pretty reasonable people, because if you think about the Second Amendment and you think about who owns all the guns, if we were the problem, you'd know about it.
Yeah, I agree with that. The best thing I heard all night. That's true. How are they going to now? Why would, again, Courtney mentioned Saul Alinsky, the principles of socialism. One of the things you do is you take away the guns from the people.
Of course.
Back. That's what they do. The Germans did it. Germany. The Russians did it. The Bolsheviks did it.
Well, the one advantage that our current liberal socialist politicians and tech media and all that have on the Germans and all that from way back when is the internet. They didn't have so many people in the world, and I'm not talking about the USA, I'm talking about the world now, dependent on the internet. So first you get everybody addicted to Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and then when everybody's communicating back and forth on those platforms, you shut down the people that you don't want to hear from. And there goes the First Amendment right out the window. The first step to socialism, which is just an open door to communism, the first step is stop people from talking to each other. Stop the First Amendment, stop free speech, then you take away the guns. Because if you try to do it the other way around, the people with the guns, they're not going to be so easy to overcome. So that's what they're doing right now. They pretty much took down Parler and all the servers. Now, I'm an IT guy. I own my own IT company, and I heard Courtney mention that we need to start building our own servers. Yeah, we need a few dozen billionaires to contribute some money so that we can build those servers. But that's thousands of terabytes of data as people chit chat and post pictures and videos, and that's a lot of storage. And only $1 trillion companies like Amazon and Google can store that much information.
What about Elon Musk?
Elon Musk has his own agenda. He's building cars, so
yeah. Well, he also has.
I don't know what he's going to do for the server community or building machines for us.
Another signal, and he claims. Well, he said that he wants free speech himself, and that Signal can do that. It won't be conservative, won't be liberal, just be free speech, which would be good if we could do that.
Listen, I know this is. I want to quote somebody, and I'm sorry I don't remember who I'm quoting. I apologize. This is a lapse in my American history teachings, but one of our famous forefathers said, freedom of speech is allowing someone to speak, or actually defending the rights of someone to speak whose opinion turns your stomach or makes you sick to your stomach, defending that person's rights. So freedom of speech, short of yelling fire in a crowded movie theater and all that nonsense, but freedom of speech, I want to hear people like Avi speak, and I want to hear people like Courtney speak. And I love having discussions with my Democrat liberal friends where we argue back and forth and an exchange of ideas. What's happening right now is not that. That is not happening right now. We are being silenced. And now you listen to these Congress people, AOC with her, let's make a list of all the people who enabled Trump, meaning us, this Trump supporters. And so now what's going to happen? You're going to go and apply for a job. Luckily, I have my own business. I'm not too concerned about it, although clients are another story. But so I'm going to apply for a job. And now these people are going to go look at my Facebook account. They're going to go look at my Twitter account. And if I'm a Trump supporter, I'm just not going to get the job. And they're going to tell you, oh, you're not an exact fit for our company, or you're not a good fit for our company. The free speech is going out the window because now I got to hide my posts. To hell with them. I'm posting what I feel like.
Yeah. All right, Anthony, let's get everybody on at the same time. Let's get Avi and Courtney, me, and Joe. Okay. We got 10 more minutes. We got to get a lot of stuff going on here. Avi, what do you got to say?
Well, I think that the way we began is we're talking about facts. I think this country is great because, by and large, I believe people want to know what is true. I agree with Courtney, who says that the media is one mass delusion and illusion, right? We know when before Trump came into office, the mainstream media was actually losing subscribers. CNN was on the way down. The major print newspapers were on the way down. Trump comes in and everything is way up. There was an article that was written that said that the announcers on the major media all renegotiated their salaries into the millions of dollars, 30, 40, 50%. So Trump has actually helped the news media grow by leaps and bounds. So it's a back and forth, right? We know that. Having said that, I mean, you don't have to wait for the information to come to you. You can literally do your own research from reputable sources. There's enough information, facts-wise, where you can get your information and you can discuss the facts. And the facts matter. And lying matters. And liars matter. And America is fed up with it.
Javi, the search engine is Google. Everybody uses Google.
What's that?
No.
I was just saying, like, basically what you're saying, like, anything that happens, we just blame it on Trump. That's number one. Number two, you said that we should go to the original source, right? How exactly do you propose that? Unless you are an investigative journalist. You know, it's not, the media is the sources. So I love when people say this, like, oh, well, you can just go directly to the source yourself. I mean, yeah, if you're an investigative journalist and you were there firsthand, collecting the information.
You know how many times Google and Wikipedia have made mistakes? You know how many times?
Wikipedia is incredibly biased. The founder of Wikipedia, Larry Sanger.
They want to sell. People want to sell newspapers. People want to sell TV shows. People want to sell things. So they put in what they want to put in. You know, I had a problem with Wikipedia myself. They put something. I worked a case in Tampa for a member of organized crime, and we didn't do anything wrong. We spoke to some jurors after the trial was over. Wikipedia put in that I was charged, which I wasn't, for witness tampering during a federal trial when the trial was over already. I mean, this is the kind of
stuff. Let me just say that I was a Wikipedia editor for about 3 years. So I've got firsthand knowledge of how Wikipedia works. Yes, in its early life, Wikipedia was a source of misinformation. But over time, wait a minute. Over time, they started to incorporate where you have to verify the facts. Now, we can go back.
No, that's not true.
Wait a minute. Let me finish. We can go back and forth and touch within conspiracy theories. But in the academic world, there's a certain standard. For example, I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, the Wall Street Journal, a conservative bastion in America.
The Wall Street Journal is not so conservative.
Not fleeing at all. Today, okay, can we take one thing at a time here? Let's just say, historically, the Wall Street Journal has been a conservative paper. That's a fact. And today they were talking about the people who did definitely riot there. That is the word we use for those people who had weapons in their cars with an intention to distribute those weapons. That is sedition. Those are facts. Now, does it mean we're anti-Trump or I'm anti-Trump? No, I'm American. And because I'm American, I'm interested in what happens to this country at a time when there is unrest on both sides. We agree with that. And a historical context is important here, right? So in the Russian Revolution, the Reds, the communists, fought the whites in the streets. During the Nazi regime, the Nazis fought the communists in the streets. The 20th century is witness to the fact that it's always two sides fighting it out in the streets. And when that happens, America has to beware, because the next thing that happens is the end of order, of social order in a country.
I can't hear. Wait. I don't, Anthony, I don't hear her. Anthony, Joe, you here? I don't hear anybody.
Vinny, do you hear me?
Sorry,
Now I hear you.
sorry, my
Yeah,
bad.
I'm good now.
Now I hear you.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I wanted
So
to
what did it
address
fix on my
the
end?
thing about Wikipedia. They'll start there. Larry Sanger, who is one of the founders of Wikipedia, has, and it's not in the early days. He's come out very recently talking about this, how they are spreading disinformation. They are politically biased. They're colluding with Google to affect the rankings of what comes up in searches. So I want to make that very clear. This is not the early days of Wikipedia. That's not to say that nothing Wikipedia puts forth is factual. That's absolutely not true. Of course, lots of people use it as a source, and sometimes, as you said, sometimes a broken clock is right twice a day. But we do know that they have a very, very strong bias. So I just wanted to address that.
Look, there is no denying that media platforms have bias. I think we can all agree to that.
Yeah.
At the same time, when you look at some of the conservative platforms, they are susceptible to bias and untruths. We're talking about outright
only one side is untruth. No, media on
as
both
such is susceptible.
Media on both sides, it's a huge problem. Media is, as Vinny was saying,
Sure.
they are looking. Yes, and yes, Steve just said all media are governed by Google. That's largely true, and we're seeing that right now with people being deplatformed, people unable to have a place to put out information because and it's not Google isn't just the problem. This is when I was talking earlier about how deep the corruption is. We are facing, and this speaks to your point, Vinny, about the Insurrection Act.
We're going to go back.
I do want to address this. I really want to get this out there. Okay, so when you were talking about the Insurrection Act, the justification for that is not the riot. The justification for that, as you were saying, Vinny, is the foreign interference. The foreign interference is a huge problem with media as well. We were seeing that foreign entities are funding a lot of these media sources like Google, who are interfering. They definitely interfere in our election, but they interfere with just our basic media sources. This is a huge problem. We are seeing subterfuge, and
Facebook during the election skewed towards Biden and not Trump.
Yes.
That's a fact.
So what I did want to say, though, about it is I absolutely think there is cause and justification for invoking it, but I am not 100% sure that the military is behind him. The evidence for that is the joint staff letter that was put forth by the high-level generals. And there are multiple ways you can look at that. I'm not saying that I know what's happening behind the scenes. I'm not privy to that information, unfortunately. I can only try and connect dots, and there are two scenarios that can be placed forth. However, if we just look at the very, cursory level of that, and the most obvious would be that these joint
Hold that thought. We have 2 more minutes left. Joe, I like to get.
Okay, I'll just say one thing to end this is that even if he invokes it and signs it, he needs them to execute. So just signing it is not enough. It's a piece of paper.
Joe, what closing arguments? What do you
I got a closing question. I want to pick on Avi a little bit. I'm sorry, Avi. I know you're being very
I
good
like
natured.
back and forth. I wish we had more.
Don't worry about it. Let's go.
Let's say
I love it.
there's
It's
not
your
a shred
idea,
of
by the way.
evidence.
Let's
You
go.
told me to do
Let's
this.
say there's not a shred of evidence so far of election fraud or election mishandling, but you still have 60, 70 million people, right? They say the last one was like 80% of the Republican Party believes that there was a bad election. It was fraudulent. How do you address that? You're just going to dismiss all 80 million people?
So
Good question, Avi.
I think that is an important question, and I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I am the chairman of the Staten Island Independence Party. We're the third largest party in New York State by 500,000 votes, and it's the Democrats and King Cuomo that has disenfranchised us. There is no doubt that the Democrats have to welcome and think about and include 70 million Trump voters. And one of the things that I mentioned is that they tend to overreach always. They get a mandate, and then they go way beyond that mandate, and then there's a pushback and the Republicans take power. And I think it's especially crucial for the Democrats, politically wise, that they look at the voting blocks that have occurred in this recent elections. They lost some serious constituents, especially in the House. So nothing is guaranteed except the fact that they may overreach and dissuade a lot of voters, and they will lose their position once more.
Yeah, but you didn't really answer the question, though, but that's okay. I'm just asking.
Well, I did. They have to include.
60 million people think something was wrong. Don't you feel that the government has an obligation to us as U.S. citizens to prove that there was nothing going on?
Listen, if you don't think 60 cases going through the judiciary is enough evidence, then you are a believer in conspiracies.
We do not hear the case.
Nobody heard the evidence.
What do you listen? It's the judiciary. 60 cases, including the Supreme Court. So you know better than the judges. You know better than the judges in many states.
I did not say I know better than the judges. I did not say I know better than the judges.
They didn't hear the evidence.
They heard evidence. They have not heard evidence.
You are not qualified to hear the evidence.
Right. They have not heard the evidence.
You should stand by the facts.
My friend, look, if we believe in the three branches of government, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, and this is why I believe America has held up, because the judiciary, many of which are Republicans,
The three branches of government
have said there is no election fraud. And unless
that's not
that's what I believe.
well, that is not accurate. The three branches
I want to see it in
Not
the
accurate.
I want to see it in the courtroom.
have not heard the evidence, so they can't say that there's no fraud. And secondly, the two branches of government were merged together under the Administrative Procedural Act of 1947. So it's not the three branches of government that are checking and balancing. What you see right now is the three branches of government together colluding against seeing any evidence.
You have Republicans from all walks of life that have come out against Trump. The defense secretaries of past today came out, put a statement, and said, including Dick Cheney and his daughter, of course, in the House, saying that Trump should be impeached. 10 Republican politicians today went along with the Democrats. We must come to terms with facts. The facts matter. Does it mean the case is closed? No. But in fact, it has gone through the judiciary. Maybe it'll continue
It has
to go
not
through.
gone through the judiciary. The judiciary
has.
has not
The Supreme
heard it.
Court has refused to see it. Refused to take it up.
Avi, I have a question for you. If you're somebody who believes so much in the facts, why is it that you're obfuscating and you're avoiding the actual facts? The facts
I'm
are
not obfuscating. The facts are that 60 cases have gone through judiciary, and they have been refused, including the Supreme Court.
They
That's
have
fact.
not.
Everything
They
else
have
is a
not.
conspiracy.
Can I just say that
I'm not a
go through
conspiracy
the
theorist.
judiciary?
We're going. We're a little. You know,
Judiciary would mean that the judiciary has actually seen and heard evidence, which they have not. So that means
the way it works is it gets presented to the court. I know just a little bit about this because I was involved in an election dispute locally in Staten Island. It gets presented to the court. The court then decides whether to take it up or not. The Supreme Court does that every year.
they may decide whether to take it up.
Judge,
You haven't heard the evidence.
that is the legal process, and I
we
abide by that.
I gotta.
We are not qualified for that.
I love this. But we're over past 8 o'clock, and I want to thank you. You guys were great tonight. We're gonna do this again because I like this back and forth. That was Avi's idea, by the way. I want to thank you, Avi.
Say goodbye to my
people.
bobblehead doll.
Thank you
here.
all.
Welcome.
I want to thank Courtney. I want to thank Avi. I want to thank Joe. And on Arthur Avenue in Little Italy, we say Sempre Noi, always with us. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Great
Thank
show.
you.
Good night.
Great.
Bye-bye. Great to be with you all.